shining but inexperienced player. I mean, that's for 5-6 weeks. That is not a lot of depth at left back. So I'm concerned much more with the back line than anything else. Like we talked about, I think having Oba and Nagel and Kenny Cooper and Marco Papa and Ozzy and Pineda, like I'm not concerned about the front 8.
Just for reference,
6.
Your team's schedule from the time the World Cup camps open is home to San Jose, at Vancouver, home to RSL, at Chicago, and then a little bit after the group stage is at DC.
It's not a terrible schedule.
It's not. And RSL is going to be missing a lot too.
Yeah, RSL will be missing and will be at home. But, those are the teams that I've been looking forward to the Sounders playing. We haven't had to play San Jose. We haven't played LA or RSL. Like, some of those big pieces, like we've seen so much of the East already, which is crazy to me. Like, we've knocked out like half of the Eastern Conference since we only play them once a year. And maybe even more than half at this point. With New England this weekend, we might be nearly done.
Yeah, and you don't get real San Jose here either, because they're going to be missing Goodson and Wando and Bernardo.
Yes. So
they're going to be missing their center back pairing, which when you miss that as a DC United fan last year, that's the worst thing you can be missing in MLS.
Yeah. So I'm comfortable with our chances during the World Cup. I don't know if you said it on the podcast or before, but a pissed off Oba for not making the Nigerian team. Okay for me and probably scary for everyone else.
Yes.
He looked awfully ready last night.
Speaking of people doing things in a row, what happened to Dallas? Remember when they were really good and they were winning a lot?
Yeah, well, we beat them. Actually, that's what's crazy is that our 5 wins in a row right now are bookended by Dallas. The first win was the crazy one on the road, and then last night beating them at home. But you know what? To me, this is fully expected. All of the guys who are much smarter than me when it comes to stats and regression have basically said that they have been riding luck like no other team. That they are generating far more goals than they deserve based on chances and shots on goal and quality of shots. Like, they're regressing to the mean. And then you have Mauro Diaz injured. And then you have Javon Watson, suspended, and you've got George John out. And, clearly the Dallas team that we played last night is not their choice 11. But, yeah, I don't expect anything different.
The Dallas team that has lost 3 in a row, their first one was against DC, where they were down to 10 men for 60 minutes. The second one was 1-0 at home against New York, where they were down to 10 men for 80 minutes.
That's right, I forgot about that, yeah.
And then on the road in Seattle.
Which
short rest. They played on Sunday, not Saturday, right? Yeah. So then they're flying to Seattle. Yeah, I mean, they honestly, Raul Fernandez kept them in that game. That could have been 3 or 4 goals for the Sounders and only a PK for Dallas.
If Taylor Seitz plays that game, you guys probably win 4-1.
Yeah, agreed. Well, what else? Chicago RSL. That was kind of a crazy game.
That was a crazy game. That was, yeah. Well, I remember you wrote an email or texted us or something like that. But it was like, I just saw a TV and Chicago's winning by 2 in Salt Lake, and I was just like, no.
Well, yeah, Chicago.
I was at the match. I was at
Chicago. Yeah, that's right.
I was at the Seattle-Philly match, and I looked up while I was buying a beer because our game hadn't started yet, and I was just shocked. It was like the 30th minute.
Yeah, that's right. It was in Chicago. It would be. I mean, it's still crazy as it is, but it would be really crazy if it was in Salt Lake.
Right.
But yeah, that was a hell of a comeback by Salt Lake to come back.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't unexpected, but wow.
So, I updated my power tiers. And I very nearly considered dropping RSL from the first tier after that game in favor of New York.
Wow.
I think RSL is interesting. They are the last undefeated team, but they have, 2 wins, 3 wins now out of 9?
I think it's 2. Or no, it's 3. Hold on, I have the standings right here.
I think the Chicago game
was 4. It's 4.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
because they had a midweek game last night?
Chicago, they've beaten Toronto, they've beaten LA, and they beat, I want to say, Vancouver.
Maybe.
I swear I looked at the standings and they only had 2 wins and.
No, they got. I'm not looking this up or anything.
I got this.
They beat LA.
I'm on the results map right now.
Portland.
That's it. That's the fourth one.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. I can't believe I forgot that game because that game was kind of sad.
I can kind of believe that you forgot that game.
So Ian, tell us why you're going to drop them a tier, and when are we going to get to talk about tiers again?
I'm writing a very long article about that. That I'm going to post it to Reddit, but I'm going to put it TLDR in the comments so that people don't have to go read 7,000 words of Ian.
Wow.
Are you going to post this in the next week?
I'm posting it on Friday. I'm posting it the same day this podcast goes out.
Perfect. Then you should be our guest next week.
Talk about your article.
Speaking of guests, I'm gonna plug the podcast a little bit. I'm a little bit excited, guys. We've got some good guests lined up in the near future. I won't throw any dates out just because everything's always open. But
also keep one of the names.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten the express confirmation from one of them, but we have gotten from the mod. From Remy.
What about the goalie?
Yep.
Okay, so we've got user Iron Goalie, who
that's right.
people are familiar with for running those awesome transfer rumor threads, as well as working with the Richmond Kickers. I think in an internship or something else. Ian might know more about that. And then Remy DWD is also confirmed, so that's really exciting. Obviously, a big member of the community. And at some point in the near future, in June, we are going to have Beer OMG Beer for what promises to be a very exciting episode.
It's going to be either a 60 or 90-minute.
I'm telling you guys right now, a 90-minute, we're not going to make it.
We can just sub on Max Arudi.
Yeah.
And
and then watch him miss his mouth repeatedly.
Or just drop the glass. Yeah, exactly. Somebody touched me.
Yeah.
Well, no, but Josh, weren't we talking about how Rudy's better served as an 80th minute sub? That's exactly what.
Exactly.
He did exactly what he was supposed to do.
And that's probably going to be his role for the rest of the season. I hope, because he comes on and he runs around and he kind of pressures people, and he's not bad at that. He's just, he's not somebody who fits the way that the Timbers play very well. So, Vancouver, San Jose, also pretty good. That was another 3-2. There were a lot of 3-2s that last weekend.
Yeah, there was a lot of good. I have to say, MLS the last 5 days has been really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, when we get to SKC Columbus, SKC doesn't typically play pretty games, but occasionally.
Let's get there.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we can go there. Sure.
No, we've got a lot of news to get through. Let's not spend too much time rehashing games that hopefully most people saw.
Yeah, so I can talk about SKC Columbus then?
Get it.
Yep.
So,
but hurry.
Okay, I'll hurry.
I'll just keep interrupting you to drag down further.
So Sporting Kansas City, they're not known really for playing pretty games like I was saying. But 2 or 3 times a year, there will be a team who tries to do not exactly what they try to do, but sort of complementary to what they do, and it produces a really pretty game. I think that was Montreal last year. There was an early Sporting Kansas City Montreal game back when Montreal was pretty good. At the beginning of 2013, people were like, "Man, this is a great advert for MLS and how to play pretty and stuff." And I feel like that's sort of, the 2-0 scoreline to Columbus is sort of harsh to Columbus because they deserved at least a draw. Columbus as a whole deserves a point at least for bringing out a pretty Sporting KC game.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in this game, so I was actually. It was interesting when you were saying oh, this was a great game, and then I saw the score and looked back at the highlights, and I think it was just the highlights cut that MLS had, but it made it look a little more one-sided than I thought it sounded from your description of it.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah. It wasn't. Yeah.
Colorado, LA. Robbie Keane misses a penalty.
I didn't see that.
Oh, well, it was great. I I'm trying to remember.
Well, you just think that's great because you're going to be directly competing with LA for the top spot in the West this year.
Oh, that is also a bold claim.
How is that a bold claim? It's LA. Of course they're going to be up there.
Yeah, but they haven't been. I mean, they've been in the playoffs, but
they won the Supporters Shield in 2011.
That's 3 seasons ago. A lot changes.
They went to the MLS Cup 2 years ago. They were the 3 seed last year.
They're 3 seed, exactly.
Which they were like 2 points behind Portland, who got the 1.
Ian, they're getting old. I'm going to flat out dismiss LA.
What? How can you can't dismiss?
Of course I can't.
Dismiss Bruce Arena.
LA hasn't even gotten past their early season doldrums to come rushing out like they always do. So no, of course I'm not going to pass on LA. But right now they're not impressive, and so I'm going to pass on them until they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also,
basically, when the World Cup is over and they come back and win like 2.5 points per game on average, that's when I'll be impressed, because they're going to. We all know they're going to.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is right now, too, you look at the standings and you're like, LA, they're, number 6. But they've played 6 games.
Right,
they haven't played 10. So, I mean, no fan of LA am I, but they're probably going to be good.
That was a great way to say that.
Any other games from the weekend you guys want to chat about? Anything? I feel like we've covered almost all of them.
I think we said something about almost all of them except
Dallas, New York.
Well, we said Dallas lost, which is
and
really,
they did.
Oh, speaking of New York, so I got that message from Remy. He's like, so you guys talked 70 minutes last week, and the only mention of New York was like a vague reference to Shep Messing, and that
was. It's true. Because none of us knows anything about New York except Ian, who hates them. So not trying to say anything good. If Pete wasn't on this show, we'd never fucking talk about the Sounders. I don't care how good they're doing. If I wasn't on, nobody would talk about Portland because nobody would really care.
I would talk. I really liked Portland last year. Yeah. I was all RCTNY. Rose City till next year.
Oh, okay. I was like, I have no idea what that could possibly.
I thought we were just sticking with the Rose City, therefore I draw. That seems to be this year's.
Yeah, that does seem to be this year's. That definitely is it.
Well, should we talk about New York in any other capacity? They did beat Dallas, and I guess I said that I don't expect them to be the number 2 seed. Well, no, let me say that more clearly. It's not that I don't
be the number 1 seed.
It's not that I don't expect them to. It's that I'm not penciling them in at the quarter pole like you are.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. I expect them to be in the top 3, 100%. But I'm not going to go ahead and just say they're going to win the East or they're going to lose the East by 1 point. I'm not comfortable with that yet.
I just think they're going to lose a lot less the World Cup than Kansas City is. I still think Kansas City will be the better team.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's there's going to be 6 weeks, potentially, maybe even 8, depending on how far teams go in the World Cup, that Beasler and Zusi, who are like the 2 clock wheels of that team,
What kind of wheels?
Clock wheels?
Clock wheels. Yeah, you know how they say like a team, like certain soccer teams, like clockwork?
Okay, yeah. It was just a soft L.
Yeah.
Oh.
So speaking of that, though, speaking of 6 weeks versus 8 weeks, club over country or country over club, guys?
Wait, what do you mean?
That's probably a little easier for Josh to answer since he's not losing a whole lot to the U.S. team, and he doesn't really.
And he doesn't care about the national team, also.
But, okay, wait. That's okay. It's not. I had a weird conversation like this with somebody else recently, and it's not that I don't care, but I don't watch a ton of international football in general. I think that, yes, there are great narratives to it, and it's exciting and it's fun, but by and large, a lot of the team play that you see on display, with the exception of a few countries that have a very strong tradition, the play that you see, the football being played, is not particularly great because you're grabbing people who don't play together all that often and throwing them on a field with tactical ideas that may not match with what they've grown up with and what their team plays, and sometimes they're being played out of position. Like, lots of times you see fairly poor games that happen to feature some good players. And outside of teams that have a really, really strong identity, Italy, Germany, Spain, Argentina, Brazil, there's a lot of just very lackluster stuff. And CONCACAF in particular, I find the games, frankly, a little uninteresting to watch. I understand the drama of them, and it's fascinating to think of the great socio-political specter of it all, but I don't know. It's just it's not that great football. I mean,
so I'm gonna brag about that conversation I had with that Minnesota youth coach again.
Yeah.
And I made a point to him because we were talking at some point about youth development, and I said, the national team manager has to be a lot different from the club manager in that you're taking all these players who play for club teams, and with the exception of 1994. But you take all these players that play for club teams, and that's where they're getting their tactical training. So what a national team manager should be doing is just bringing all those guys in for what they do for their clubs, largely, so they don't have to retrain them tactically, and just let them play with each other the way they're sort of meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, I mean, that's, why Klinsmann's a good national coach and not a good club coach. Because his job is really just to make sure that the national team players are as good of soccer players individually as they can be. And I feel like no one's done that as well as Klinsmann has. And I know we had Arena, who's great, and Bob Bradley was great, but they were also great club managers. And what that means is they can install the tactics, and when you try and install tactics on the national team, it can work, but it might not work as optimally as if you're just trying to make them good individually, so that what they're trained to do naturally is what they can do for the national team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what, I wouldn't disagree with that. And so, yeah, it's not. So, sorry, to go back to trying to defend myself a little bit here. It's not that I don't. It's not that I don't care about international football at all. I just don't. I find it a kind of bizarre, frequently overhyped thing where you get this sort of mishmash of players who are trying to play in their national style, whatever that is, and like I said, I think very few nations actually have a defined style in which they play, and lots of times it's just a little bit flat because no one seems to have the understanding that you get when you train day in, day out with someone for years. So that's all. And yeah, I don't watch a ton of national team games. So sue me.
Will you watch World Cup though? Will you go to Portland watch parties or Seattle watch parties?
Yeah, I'll probably watch some of them. I mean, definitely I'll watch. I'll watch games in the World Cup. Yeah, I watch U.S. games when they're in the World Cup and I can see them. So they're on at odd times.
Yeah. Well, not this year though. They're on pretty.
Well,
this year.
Not for the West Coast. You think they're reasonable until you realize that it's like a noon game on a Thursday. That's not super reasonable.
Yeah.
The 3 o'clock game's a little bit better. I can work with that. I think we have a Sunday game, a Monday game at noon, and a Thursday game at 3 p.m. Or maybe the Monday's at 3 and the Thursday's at noon for us.
The Sunday's at 3 for y'all because it's 6 East
That's
time.
fine. Yeah, Sunday's fine. I mean, we're both weekend guys, so that's no big deal. But yeah, I will definitely be getting creative with my hours.